Can Nate Diaz beat Jake Paul? It's a tough one. Stylistically, I think what Diaz is going to struggle with is being a southpaw. He relies a bit on the shoulder roll. Like we saw him with Conor McGregor rolling the left hand, using the shoulders to deflect the blow with a lean back, and how he sets up his lead right hook. That might be a problem against Jake Paul. The Philly shell type of defense doesn't work as well. Against opposite stances, it works better. Same side versus same side. That's why Mayweather always had a little bit more problem shoulder rolling against southpaw fighters. Turning the shoulder gets you away from the left hand, but it doesn't get you away from the right. So we could see Diaz struggling a little bit with the right hand of Paul. But what I will say with Diaz, what I think gives him the edge, why I think he's probably going to win the fight, and where I would give him the advantage, is he's the most durable geezer. As someone that cornered against him, I cornered him against Leon Edwards, and I pretended to be Diaz for an entire fight camp. I know him quite well. I did a bit of method acting. I've been Diaz for a long time. I was about 14 weeks in the end, because they pushed the fight back into the 4 weeks because Diaz sustained a cut in training. So you might just think, you know, what is this numpty know? And in a way, yeah, you could still argue with me and still think my opinion is invalid. I'm a big Diaz fan. Been watching his fights for a very long time. Fan of his brother, who I think's a slightly better fighter than Nate, but I do think he's got a good chance against Paul, because I think that durability, that toughness, and the punch output is going to draw Jake into deep waters, and I think Diaz will overwhelm him and probably win a decision. I don't know if he'll get Jake out of there unless it's just sheer exhaustion. That's one of the other outcomes I can foresee happening, is that Jake gets kind of so exhausted and overwhelmed, he just kind of slumps to a knee and accepts defeat, accepts the 10 count, looking at the ref and his corner as if to say, yeah, I'm just not going to carry on. Nate's ability to withstand damage is what he's going to fall and lean upon. I think he's going to have a little bit of I think Diaz is going to have a few problems with the timing of Jake Paul, especially in the early going. I think he's going to have to basically get through those rounds, get hit a few times, wake himself up a little bit, and then when he gets himself into the fight and puts his foot on the gas a little bit, gets into any sort of a rhythm or a groove, he's going to give Jake a problem. Now, depending on which version of Diaz we see, like if we're talking Michael Johnson Diaz, who was absolutely shredded, ripped, in shape, then he should realistically just walk through Jake Paul. But if we see Rafael dos Anjos Diaz, who basically turned up with injuries for a payday, really clearly out of shape, and if Diaz is just thinking, I'm just going to get in there, move around a bit, and get a night's work, if he doesn't basically have any pride anymore about losing to a YouTube boxer, then yeah, you could just see Jake Paul outpointing him, sticking him, moving on the outside, and basically stopping Diaz from getting into any sort of rhythm. But I do think Diaz does have pride. I do think he will decide that he needs to win this fight. Like, just out of that alone, just for his, whatever you're going to call it, legacy, just the fact that he's been a professional fighter for years. He's done it all the hard way. He's done it all the right way. He's done the longest road possible. He's fought for UFC titles. I've got my faith in Diaz. I like the fact that he's a slight underdog. He's been an underdog many times throughout his career. In fact, I won a shed load of money on him when he fought Michael Johnson, because that was coming off the dos Anjos fight, and all I needed to do was take one look on Diaz's Instagram and see him training and the shape he was in to go like, nah man, he was a 5-1 underdog, and I just bet the house on Diaz in that fight, and he came good, because when he's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet, when he's motivated, he's an absolute handful for basically anyone in the world, and he's very difficult to put away. I don't think Jake Paul's going to knock him out. I don't think Jake Paul is going to have the endurance to match Diaz, especially in the pocket where Jake isn't as comfortable. He fights at range and then he clinches, fights at range and then he clinches. I think Diaz is going to be able to box his way out of clinches and basically ruffle Jake's feathers in the clinch. He's going to take a lot of damage. That's kind of par for the course with a Diaz fight, especially when he's up against the tricky, or what Jake's going to present, an unusual style with athleticism, being a big strong bull and packing a bit of punching power. Going to be a naturally bigger and stronger man than Diaz. But I think what Diaz has got is all those years of experience, all those years and rounds of boxing in a gym with some world caliber fighters, like one of the greatest of all time, Andre Ward, who retired himself undefeated. I think he's got enough to fall back on to just be able to coast and get through this fight without even having to get into fifth gear. I genuinely think Diaz can win this half-mast. But there's still always that little bit of concern, like that he could, if Jake's going to turn up fit, he's coming off the back of a loss, he's going to be a bit more motivated, and if Jake can just be clunky enough on the outside, use that right hand to keep Diaz at bay, unsettle him, use his footwork and ring craft to just slow the pace of the fight down and just pick away at Diaz from range, then he could definitely run away with a points decision. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who do you think is going to win? Do you think Jake Paul is going to knock out Nate Diaz? Do you think Nate Diaz is going to knock out Jake Paul? Do you think Diaz is going to run away with this fight? Do you even give a shit? As always, thanks for watching. You can also follow me over on Patreon. Pro Striking out. I'll catch you later.